Hello, my agony aunties. You are real life aunties too. Yes. Not as old as me.
Makes me feel old.
So, I mean, we've come in with a lot of cheer, but actually, we've got a very sad question from a listener, which is my mum died 2 weeks ago and I haven't cried since. In fact, I feel nothing. Is this normal?
This is your area of expertise, Mum. I feel like you might be the first to speak.
So, yes, I mean, feeling numb and the shock of grief. Often people don't cry. So when there's so many things that come into my head so when people go to the funeral and they see those most significantly close to the person that's died not crying, people say, God, they're so brave. They weren't even crying. But actually it's because they were in a kind of altered state of shock. And that's why I always say that you need to record things and audio things because you don't actually remember. Your whole lifetime was with your mum. She was the first person to look into your eyes, to hold you, love you, take care of you your whole life. It's a very significant loss. And the measure of your grief is the measure of the love. And if it was a sudden death, I don't know if it was or not, the shock is even greater. So it can take weeks and weeks before the real reality, which is the task of mourning, sets in and you feel the pain. And in some times when you feel the pain, it's fury, not tears. I think we have quite a simple view of grief, that it's someone with a little handkerchief crying quietly, and it really isn't. So what you're feeling is normal is my first response.
Yes, and I think grief is much messier.
It definitely is.
When, Mum, things are feeling numb, at what point do you go, maybe I need a bit of help because I'm stuck?
So I think the lens to look at is the person who is bereaved. Their psychological history of loss will influence how they grieve. Their personality type and their secure, insecure attachment will influence how they grieve. The circumstances of the death will influence it. And the quality of the relationship, how the relationship was, and also the support they get at the time and after the loss. So if all of those aspects are quite tricky, it could be that you feel numb for longer. But if you look at each of those aspects and you recognise that they're tricky, that could be an indicator that you will need extra support, because grief on the whole is a naturally adaptive process, that it's our mind updating to this new reality that we don't want that the person we love has died. But there are barriers to that block us and anaesthetise us. So we need, I think, looking at that for yourself. And I think there's often rules about you shouldn't see someone for the first month, you shouldn't see someone till the first 3 months. And there's lots of memes and things about that. Mine is very kind of person-centred, is that if you want support at the point that you want it, definitely access it. And there is no rules about when you should or shouldn't.
Why do you think there are, why do you think that is? That people, I didn't know that there were all these memes about, don't get...
There's lots of kind of rules. People, you can't get it for the first month because you're not going to be able to use it. And it's just because people want control, they want to prescribe it, like take 10 weeks of therapy and then everything will be fine, and take it at week 10 and then you're sorted.
Right. Yes, I can understand, not everybody would want to get help immediately, but I imagine some people it would be helpful.
Well, I mean,
weirdly prescriptive.
Exactly, it's weirdly prescriptive, and also, even if they're not ready to really face the reality, they're forming a relationship with you, and that's at the centre of whether the therapy is going to be effective or not. It's the quality of the relationship with the therapist. But as a general rule of thumb, I see people sort of 3 months after the death, because it's when their friends have gone back to their life. They've had to go back to work, probably, way before often, and the pain really kicks in. Is often 3 months.
Oh, I mean, this is a sort of slight tangent.
Go on.
But, when I worked at Yale, there was a lot of research for a traumatic bereavement, and this was specifically with under 18s, that actually very quick intervention had much better outcomes.
That's so interesting.
I mean, it was a specific trauma-based intervention for people who had experienced the young people who experienced traumatic grief. But anyway,
I think that's helpful.
So I suppose it's just not a one way that's the right way.
Yeah. It's very unique and subjective. And most people that want support, or a lot of people that want support, can't access it. It's not available. But we will put lots of links on this to organisations and to my Grief Works app.
Yeah. Yes, and I suppose lots of people can't access therapy because of financial reasons, because of wait times, but there are lots of other ways of accessing support. So, for example, I met through you, Mum, Amber Jeffries, who has an Instagram account called The Grief Gang, and she runs groups for people who have experienced bereavement that's much more affordable than like weekly individual therapy, and can be incredibly supportive.
My only other thought was, when we're numb, it's usually, it's a protective strategy, it's a coping strategy against pain, and a very necessary one at times that helps us survive and get through times that otherwise we wouldn't know how to get through. You can also support your system to feel more safe, so that pain is more able to move through your body, or you are more able to connect. So things like spending time with friends, it doesn't mean talking about it with them, or going on walks in nature, or whatever makes you and your body feel safe. Cup of tea, hot bath, cozy films, audiobooks that are familiar, things that just give a bit of feedback to your body that although this very, in many ways, frightening and shocking and as well as sad things happened, your world has changed, and that makes us go, "Whoa!" clench. If you can support yourself to feel a bit safer again and familiar, like, I'm in my own home. Really let yourself notice that you're physically safe. That might create more space for feelings to come.
That's lovely. That's a really lovely place to end. So thank you both, and thank you for asking the question. And I think it's a really important question. And if those of you have other questions, do DM me on Instagram at Julia Samuel MBE. And there's always a caveat to our answers, that if you don't agree with them, that's absolutely fair enough. It's just, these are our thoughts and ideas, that if they're helpful, use them, but if they're not, disregard them. If you think they're useful for others, do share with others, and we'd love it if you could rate and subscribe, because it helps other people find us. But thank you for listening.